I bet my cursor does. Hold on.
Oh, that's get everybody seated. You know who people are.
And then before that, I was in an old policy. Oh, yeah. Like 8 years. Really? Then I'm from.
I know.
No, no, it's fine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me back there? Thank you so very much for coming this afternoon. We're going to get started. But before we get started, I see that we have a number of members here from the Financial Services Committee, and I'd just like to make sure that you know who they are, and hopefully they'll be able to stay so that they can engage in a few questions. Sitting right on the front row, we have Congressman Heck. Raise your hand. Newest member of the Financial Services Committee, Congressman Horsford, Congresswoman Moore, and Congressman Foster. Thank you guys very much for being here. We'll just get started. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here at today's panel on the Export-Import Bank. And there's Mr. Clay, Congressman Clay. Just kind of wave your hand. Thank you. And the important role the bank plays in opening up international markets to U.S. exporters, which in turn helps support and create jobs for American workers. I'd like to welcome, and I'd especially like to thank, in particular, our panel members, many of whom changed important plans, rearranged busy schedules, and traveled quite far to be with us today. I have to say I was struck by the quick responses I received from our panel members to attend today's event, and I was very impressed by the depth of support and the evident feelings of loyalty for the bank and for Chairman Hochberg that many shared with me in response to my invitation. This is a diverse and interesting panel today, and I think you're going to be very impressed. Our panel includes the largest exporter of manufactured goods in the country, the voice of labor, several small business owners from across the country, each with their own stories to tell, and of course, the president and chairman of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, Fred Hochberg, and I welcome you all here today. Thank you all so very much for coming. The Export-Import Bank of the United States is the official export credit agency of the United States and is charged with aiding the financing of exports that contribute to the employment of U.S. workers. To accomplish this mission, the bank offers a range of financial products to U.S. exporters and their customers. This support allows U.S. exporters to overcome political or commercial risk that exporters or private financial institutions are unwilling or unable to take a loan. EXIM also helps American companies compete with foreign firms that benefit from their own country's export credit agencies. Now, on the question of support for the bank, let me start by saying that support in Congress for the Export-Import Bank has been largely bipartisan and very well deserved. I believe this support reflects the bank's strong record of success in carrying out its mandate, which is to help create and preserve U.S. jobs by promoting the export of U.S. goods and services abroad. The statistics are impressive. Over the past 5 years, the bank has supported 1.2 million private sector jobs, including 205,000 jobs this last fiscal year. Support for manufacturing reached an all-time high last year, just over $11 billion, which means the bank did more in manufacturing than they did in other sectors. The bank also continues to reach out and do more in support of small businesses, which represented nearly 90% of the total number of Export-Import Bank authorizations last year. Moreover, last year, the bank supported a record level of exports by women and minority-owned businesses, a 17% increase from the year before. The bank also operates a self-sustaining financial basis, meaning that it covers its own program and reserve expenses entirely through fees it charges for its services. In addition to covering its own expenses, the bank generates excess funds, which remits to the Treasury. Last year, for the first time, EXIM generated more than $1 billion for the U.S. taxpayer, which is sent to the Treasury. This was above and beyond the cost of all operations and loan loss reserves. While support for the bank has historically been bipartisan, what we face today is strong opposition to the bank from a number of vocal activist lawmakers on the right who are ideologically opposed to many legitimate functions of government. These members believe that EXIM interferes in the free market, creating a less efficient economy, and therefore they believe EXIM should be abolished. This is why I've organized this panel discussion today, to continue our efforts to push for a speedy reauthorization of the bank this year, and in light of the fact that the chairman of the Financial Services Committee has yet to schedule a hearing to consider this year's renewal of the bank's charter. I'd also like to point out to opponents of EXIM who claim they're concerned with protecting the taxpayer that our panel members are taxpayers too. They create jobs and hire workers, and those workers are all taxpayers as well. So in closing, as the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, I just want to add that since the bank was founded in 1934, it has functioned under both Republican and Democratic presidents, and Congress has renewed its charter 15 times with little or no controversy. The Export-Import Bank is not a Republican bank, and it is not a Democratic bank. It's an American bank, and I'm so very pleased that I'm serving on the Financial Services Committee at this time to make sure that we really continue the tradition of support from both sides of the aisle for this very important bank. With that, I'd like to start by introducing the chairman and president of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, the Honorable Fred Hochberg. Before taking the realm of the Export-Import Bank 5 years ago, Mr. Hochberg had previously served as the acting administrator of the Small Business Administration, where he quadrupled lending to minority and women-owned small businesses. Prior to his service at SBA, Mr. Hochberg was the longtime president and CEO of the Lillian Vernon Corporation, where he led the transformation of a small family mail-order company into an international publicly traded direct marketing corporation. Would you give a big round of applause and a welcome to Mr. Hochberg? We will call on him at this moment to share with us whatever he'd like to share with us. And then we will introduce each of our panelists prior to their speaking. So with that, Mr. Hochberg, Would you please wait one moment? We have some more members who have entered the room. Congressman Scott, Congresswoman Sewell, and Congressman Crowley. Would you wave your hand so that they'll see that you're all here? Thank you very much. Mr. Hochberg, would you proceed? You may come to the podium where you can really
project.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Well, let me first thank the ranking member Waters and members of the House members who have come to join us today, and mostly hear from the small business owners and labor and some of our larger exporters here. And I feel exceedingly fortunate that we have as the ranking member someone who is so knowledgeable about so many of the aspects of what we do at the Ex-Im Bank, and that makes it far more effective for us as we move through the reauthorization. And the Congresswoman and I, as many others in the room, we had a really a spectacular Global Access Forum out in California. And Congresswoman, I had to leave, but she stayed all afternoon, answered every question, moderated every discussion, and really did it was really totally and completely engaged with the business owners in her community. So thank you for that, and let me just give you a round of applause. I also want to thank the customers of Ex-Im who traveled to Washington from all over the country today to share their experiences of growing jobs through exports and sharing that with this committee. And as the Congresswoman said, working with business owners such as these and others around the country, we have supported over 1.2 million jobs over the last 5 years, including 205,000 this last year alone. And I'm going to repeat a little bit what the Congresswoman said, but we did this at no cost to the taxpayers. And in fact, we generated over $1 billion in profits after all expenses and all loan loss reserves. The exact number is $1,057,000,000. And if you promise not to tell anybody, that's also the password on my iPhone, just because I like that number so much. We did 3,800 transactions last year. About 90% were for small businesses. That is an all-time record. We financed $6 billion in small business exports. 5.2 of that was direct. And we have done more in the last 5 years than the previous 8 years combined. To help our small businesses, we have launched 65 global access forums, one of which we did with the ranking member, and with many other members here around the country. Congressman Heck is another one that we did that with, mostly to spread the word that how Ex-Im can reduce the risk and improve sales, profits, and employment among small businesses. And many of these panelists that you're going to hear from today participated in these global access forums, and in fact, 2 of them I actually met at a global access forum. Jenny Fulton in her signature green, and Nancy Mercolino, both learned about Ex-Im Bank at these forums and have gone on to export to global markets. You're also going to hear today from some of the minority and women-owned businesses that we have financed. They're exporting to markets such as sub-Saharan Africa, because Ex-Im Bank, what we do is we give them peace of mind. So after they ship those goods overseas, they know they're going to get paid. They're not going to put their business at risk. The 400 employees of Ex-Im Bank, we take great pride in that we have financed more minority and women-owned businesses in the last 5 years than the previous 16 years combined. We have done more in 5 years than all of President Bush and all of President Clinton combined. Let me just give you a quick update on the number of reforms and improvements we have implemented since our last reauthorization. These were all mandated by Congress, and they focus primarily on areas of transparency, risk, and oversight. It is an extensive list. We have begun posting in the Federal Register every transaction over $100 million. We have reviewed and updated our economic impact procedures, which we've posted on our website and gone beyond the requirements of Congress. We reviewed and reported on our content provisions. We submit quarterly reports to Congress on our default rate, and we are currently running at approximately 0.25%. We have created a position and hired a new chief risk officer. We have produced reports to Congress on a business plan, a report on small business, and a textile plan. We have added a textile representative to our advisory committee. We have worked with GAO on numerous reports that were mandated in the last reauthorization. We have agreed with every single one of their recommendations, and I've also personally met with the Comptroller General to indicate our support for their work. We've replied to Congress on each of those GAO reports as required. We have provided also at the request of Congress a rationale for all long-term loans and guarantees in our annual report, and we have updated our Iran sanctions. It is a long list of projects that were initiated the last reauthorization, and we have complied with all of them. So, in closing, the most beautiful words in any speech, let me talk about our reauthorization of Exim Bank, which is due to expire on September 30th, 2014, and why we're here today. Congress needs to reauthorize the bank no later than September 30th, 2014. Otherwise, we will not be able to assist the companies that are sitting here today and you're going to hear from, and other businesses around the country. On a daily basis, American businesses and their workers frankly need to scrap and fight to win overseas sales. And you're going to hear some of their stories today. There are some 60 other export credit agencies around the world, some regulated, some not. And they are looking to expand their nation's exports. They would like nothing more than to steal sales and jobs from your districts. That is their goal. For example, let me give you one example. South Korea, they have an export credit agency that does $100 billion in loans, 3 to 4 times the amount we do in an economy that's less a tenth of our size. Now, you're going to hear a lot of arguments from, and somewhat misinformed arguments from some of our opponents. So let me just address a few of them. Opponents will say, if we can make $1 billion in profit, why doesn't the private sector do that? Well, frankly, the private sector does a spectacular job, and they do about 98% of the exports are financed purely by the private sector. But they can't do it all. And that's where we step in. We step in for difficult products, difficult countries, where, but for us, the export would not happen and we would lose the jobs to an overseas competitor. Opponents also claim that we pick winners and losers. We do not do that. Customers come to us when they need our financing. We're demand-driven. We make sure we only finance those transactions with a reasonable assurance of repayment and then meet our environmental standards. The only winners we pick are American companies. We would like American companies to win and not lose out to foreign competition. Many of our critics say that we compete with private sector banks. We don't do that. 98% of the transactions we do with private sector banks. And that's the vast majority of our transactions. Our critics also say that we put the taxpayers at risk. We report every 90 days to Congress what our defaults are. We're currently running, to give you an exact number, 0.267%, just about 1/4%. If we were bankers, we would be getting a lot of applause in the private sector. There's a lot of noise out there, and I'm asking the members of Congress to do me a favor. Ignore the noise, and made by a vocal minority of our opponents. What we need you to do and what the members of this panel need you to do is continue what you do best, and that is keeping businesses thriving, creating the environment that they can compete in a fiercely competitive world and a global economy so they can build their business, create more jobs, and put more people to work back at home. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Nancy Mercolino, president and owner of Ceilings Plus. Ceilings Plus, one of the few manufacturing companies in Los Angeles, engineers and manufactures architectural ceilings and wall products. 7 years ago, Ceilings Plus had revenues of $15 million and employed 65 workers. In 2007, with Exim's help, the companies won its first international project worth $18 million. Today, the company's revenues are upwards of $38 million, and they employ over 200 workers, due in large part to their export products. Ms. Mercolino, thank you.
Go ahead. Okay. In 2008 and 2009, there was a recession, but in my industry, the construction industry, there was a depression. Our clients mostly are subcontractors. They were laying off, putting people on furlough, and cutting benefits to survive. But Ceilings Plus not only survived, but thrived because of the leap of faith we had in ourselves in 2007 to take on the international project bigger than our annual sales. The project in Doha, Qatar is now, we have built over 4 million square feet of ceilings. There is a wood ceiling in one concourse alone that is 8 football fields long. 2 Yankee stadiums can fit into the main terminal building. It was a courageous move on our part and scary. Our U.S. bank, for 20 years, very large, I won't name names, however, was not keen on the idea of helping with export financing, no less in the Middle East. Ceilings Plus, my company, sought out alternate banking that worked closely with XM, and we were able to secure a $5 million working capital line. Our dream was to get this project so we could buy a world-class manufacturing line that could do the volume we were looking at. Well, we did it. The manufacturing line is now fully paid off, and we are getting projects in Oman and Abu Dhabi, and we are fierce international competitors now. When I first visited the job site in Doha many years ago, it amazed me how the world's infrastructure projects are dominated by European companies. Not many Americans were there. But they want us there. They want our quality, our spirit, our expertise, and our drive. 70% of all new jobs in the United States come from small business, and if small business exported, the country would thrive. I am proof as a woman-owned business doing work in the Middle East, we can all do it. I would like to especially thank Congress because I know that it's somewhat mandated that 20% of all the loans that are given are to be small business, and that means a lot. And XM is very motivated to help us, so I thank you.
What a great story, and I think I saw a picture of a ceiling that you had done, and I was just amazed at how ornate and intricate it was, so I'm glad you're here. Mr. Michael Boyle, President and CEO, Boyle Energy Services and Technology Incorporated in Manchester, New Hampshire. Boyle Energy Services and Technology Incorporated is a global energy construction commissioning company that was founded in New Hampshire 20 years ago by Michael Boyle, a U.S. Navy veteran. BES&T has been a customer of the bank for more than a decade, during which time it has doubled in size twice and increased employment by 500%. 85% of all of its revenue is derived from exports. Thank you for being here, Mr. Boyle. Please, go right ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Ladies and gentlemen, Boyle Energy Services is a small company that 10 years ago innovated a technology that hadn't been innovated in 40 years. We have subsequently made a $4.5 million internal investment to retool the company, where we went from the smallest portion of our existence to now being the #1 supplier in the world of what we do, with a completely heavy upside in growth. We were able to do that because we were able to secure credit protection insurance from our international receivables, which were meager at the time. Doing that allowed us to invest our capital that we got from the jobs, because our projects are cyclical, in buying new equipment here in the United States, which we in turn took overseas and did the service work that we then improved. In 2012, in December, we were awarded the patents for the new technology. We're the only company in 40 years that has done such a thing. We've grown 400% since working with the Exim Bank, and we've grown 600% in employment during that period of time. We expect to do it again. We're hiring today. As early as last December through July, we were working in a new field. We were specifically in power and energy before this. And now we're working in the gas-to-liquid refinery market, where we just worked in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta, with a gas-to-liquid plant, where we saved Chevron more than $100 million by reducing the schedule of commissioning that project by 90%. That in of itself is not what I'm proud of. What we're most proud of is we reduced the carbon footprint of that project by the same amount, and we also reduced the hazardous waste that was going to be dumped into the Niger River by that same percentage. This is what we've done since working with the Exim Bank. Our hope is to continue to grow so that we don't need to work at the Ex-Im Bank so that we can attract private financing. We currently can't. I know of no operation or bank in the United States that will underwrite our service business and our service receivables other than through the support of the Export-Import Bank of the United States. None. And if anybody does, I'll be happy to talk to them, but I don't have another vehicle in which to go to. It's that simple. When I grew up, I went in the Navy. I made a choice to do so, and I learned what I've learned from the United States government. Prior to that, the United States government helped my family receive support, and we made ourselves what we are today. This bank is doing exactly the same thing for small business. It's not here permanently, and as soon as we become a mid-sized business, we'll find our way to get off of the bank, and we'll move forward. And I'll continue to come to the bank's aid as long as they need me for other small businesses, and I'll speak out as loudly as I can. This bank has made this company a success, culminating in our ability to give 1% of our global revenue to charity last Friday for celebrating our 20th anniversary. And I mentioned the Ex-Im Bank at that night. We could not have done it without the relationship with the private sector bank and this bank and the federal government. I was the one that coined the phrase the best kept secret in American government, and I've made it in no uncertain terms. I've stated it, and I'll state it here for you people. As a businessman, as a global exporter, this is the best thing about American government. This is what we should be proud of. This is what we do best. And we should not hesitate 1 minute to reauthorize this organization so that other people like ourselves can move forward. Thank you.
Wow. What an inspiring message. We're going to take him on the road. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyle. And next we have Mr. Ray Zuckerman, CEO, Serverlift Corporation. Serverlift Corporation is an inner-city company in Phoenix, Arizona, which manufactures lifting and handling equipment for the data center industry in the U.S. and around the globe, with over 30% annual growth since first production in 2005. Serverlift is one of the company's it is one of 5,000 fastest growing companies, as well as one of the inner city 100 fastest growing companies. I want to add that the day Mr. Zimmerman received the invitation to this panel, he wrote back to say that he had just postponed a trip to Israel with his wife for this event. He and his wife, Joan, who's in the audience, will be leaving for Israel as soon as the panel adjourns. Where is Joan? Thank you, Joan, for being here. Give Joan a big round of applause. Mr. Zuckerman, you're on.
Thank you, Representative Waters. Am I on now? Okay. Again, thank you, Representative Waters, for the opportunity to support the Ex-Im Bank in a public forum. The work that the bank has done is clearly echoed by everyone here, and certainly by our company. Early on in our product life, we realized that in order to continue to grow our business, we had to have global access. Initially, we sold to users around the world directly, but to reach broader markets, it was necessary for us to change from a direct sales model to a distribution model. Serverlift needed credit-worthy distributors with the ability to purchase in container load quantities. While Serverlift was financially strong, failure to collect would harm the company. XM provided the payment guarantees. Since XM has the strength to be able to collect from the foreign sources, and since the companies are creditworthy, it has never been necessary to call upon XM to perform the guarantee. I think this is one of the most significant things that XM does. By being a presence whose impact prevents companies from defaulting, because the impact of defaulting with the XM Bank is significant. And thus, the fact that the guarantee is there means you don't need the guarantee. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in the right direction. With the strength of XM behind us, and with the simple loan guarantees, we've been able to accomplish the following. We increased our international sales from just over $100,000 in 2010 to over $1 million now. It's over 1,000% increase. We sell in over 45 countries, including China, the Middle East, Africa, and Vietnam. In 2010, we had 7 employees. Today, we have 25. Serverlift is a premier provider of lifting equipment for data centers. We were able to shift our manufacturing from China to the U.S. Currently, U.S. Census Bureau figures shows that for every $6 that goes out of the country in foreign purchases, $5 come in, a net outflow of 20%. With Serverlift Corporation, for every dollar that goes out of the country in foreign purchases, $3 come in, a net inflow of 300%. Currently, almost a third of all our sales are outside the U.S., and we expect to bring that up to 50% of sales. We have covered most of the planet with points of stocking distributors. It is both exciting and humbling to be part of the growth of the inner cities, the state of Arizona, and the great nation. Made in USA is a powerful, persuasive marketing tool. American products earn premium prices throughout the world. We not need to be the low-cost provider. What we need to do is go after the business with pride in America and in the American workers. XM has truly been our partner in this growth, starting with prompt credit approval on our customers and a straightforward application process. Chairman Hochberg and his extremely courteous and responsive staff have enabled our company to achieve the things that we just talked about. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and we really are appreciative for the fact that you delayed your trip in order to be here. Thank you, and we'd like to thank your wife, too, because I know without her agreeing, you would not have been able to do it. Next, we're going to hear from Ms. Jenny Fulton, CEO and co-founder of Ms. Jenny's Pickles. Their pickle world headquarters is located in Kernersville, North Carolina. They produce all natural, quote, no junk in our jar, quote, unquote, pickles, and export to several countries, including China, and we're anxious to hear more about that. So with that, let us hear from you, Ms. Fulton.
Thank you so much for having me. I am Jenny Fulton. I'm the Chief Pickle at Miss Jenny's Pickles in Kernersville, North Carolina. It is an honor to be with you today, and more importantly, I'm probably one of the smallest companies that depends on the Export-Import Bank. And let me tell you why I depend on the Export-Import Bank. Because we do export to China, to Canada, and the UK. I do not borrow money from the bank. What I do is I borrow peace of mind where I pay for that service through insurance. They insure my purchase orders so that when I export North Carolina goodness to China, I can sleep at night. I own my own company. I don't sleep very well. But that's one area I get to sleep at night because the Export-Import Bank has partnered with small businesses like mine. And without them, we would not be able to export. I can't go to China and hunt down pickles or a payment. I can't do it. But having the Export-Import Bank on my team, and 95% of the world lives outside the United States. Do we not want 95% of the world to have North Carolina goodness, Miss Jenny's Pickles? Well, the only way that's going to happen is with the reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. I'm just going to tell you. The other thing is my experience with the Export-Import Bank has been invaluable. Chairman Hochberg has he has been crucial to our success, as well as his team members. Do you know, I can call up there, I can email, say, I don't understand how to do something on the computer. They take time to help us succeed. That is what they are all about, is American jobs and succeeding with small business women selling pickles. So with that, I'll take any question later, but trust me, it's a no-brainer. Common sense, Export-Import Bank needs to be reauthorized today. Thank you.
Okay. Now, that's real proof that the bank helps small businesses and women-owned businesses. Give her another round of applause. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Sherrod Weber, CEO, Innovative Global Supply in South Carolina. Mr. Weber established his company in 2008 as a global supplier of high-quality nutritional products. Over the last 6 years, IGS has expanded its capabilities to promote global wellness in numerous areas, including sustainable agriculture, economic development, and infrastructure projects in Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. I understand Mr. Weber postponed a meeting he had scheduled today with the Minister of Housing from Ghana to sign a MOU to build millions of dollars worth of housing in Ghana, just so he could join our panel today. And we're so pleased that you're here. We don't want to miss that business, but you tell him that what you did was not only good for you, but it's good for him also, okay? Mr. Sherrod Weber.
Thank you so much for having me here, Congresswoman Waters. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here. And Jenny, you are a tough act to follow. I've known Miss Jenny for over a year, and she is a incredible salesperson. She has great products. Her pickles are fantastic. So it's an honor to sit next to you as well. I started the company back in 2008. I worked in corporate America for over 20 years, had an opportunity to go out on my own and export U.S.-made products overseas. In 2009, we had our first sale. We shipped about a 20-foot container of vitamins to Bulgaria, and we were off and running at that point. Our company is unique in the sense that we started out as a 100% export company. So we had no domestic business in 2008 when we started the company. We focused on emerging markets. When I say emerging, we were talking about sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. We were operating in markets that most of the larger companies, due to the perceived risk, did not want to operate. But that gave us an opportunity as a smaller company to go in and capture business. So again, that first year, 2009, we have our products shipped to Bulgaria. We were not as sophisticated as we are now. We asked that customer to pay for that order 100% in advance. It was a small order, they could do it. As the company grew, we realized we could not be competitive by asking our foreign buyers, many of which are smaller companies, to pay 100% in advance. So like Jenny, we use a multi-buyer credit insurance policy to ensure our deliverables. And basically with that policy, it gives us competitiveness where we can offer credit or terms to our customer with a small down payment. Once they have been approved by the XM Bank, then we can sleep well at night as well. I'm a small business owner as well, and our deliverables have to be insured. The XM Bank gives us that assurance. It gives us the opportunity to go out in these emerging markets to Ghana, to Ethiopia, to Uganda, to Zambia, and markets that have a high perceived risk. But again, the XM Bank's underwriting makes sure that we have the right customers lined up as well. So now we have operated for the last 6 years. We have a chance to expand our business model, move into agriculture, move into infrastructure projects, as Congresswoman Waters mentioned. Tomorrow I meet with the Housing Minister of Ghana. He flew in from Accra to meet with myself, the Economic Development Director of the City of Columbia, South Carolina, as well as the Mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. The Economic Trade Minister from Ghana is going to fly down to Columbia, South Carolina as well, and we are very close to securing an MOU for a $100 million housing project in Accra, Ghana. Now, we have stiff competition in sub-Saharan Africa, and particularly on this project. The Chinese have made a very competitive bid. However, our friends in Ghana would rather work with a U.S. company with U.S. technology and U.S. products. Given the choice, overwhelmingly, and in most of my markets, customers want U.S. products. They want U.S. services and U.S. technology if you give them a choice. In many cases, they don't have a choice. So the XM Bank levels the playing field. It gives companies as small as Innovative Global Supply an opportunity to go out and secure a $100 million contract. And if we get that contract, when we get that contract, we're going to bring 500 jobs, approximately 500 jobs, back to the state of South Carolina. These are prefab units, prefabricated housing units, and we're going to ship most of the products from South Carolina. And for that reason, the City of Columbia is on board, the Economic Development Director of Columbia and the county is on board. They understand how important this business is. And this project doesn't move forward without XM financing. So again, I urge you to reauthorize the bank. It creates jobs. It allows us to go out and get the business. It's crucial. Without the Ex-Im Bank, we can't do what we do. Again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weber, for that presentation, and we're very hopeful that you will be able to close that deal and build those houses in Ghana, okay? Thank you very much. We have more members from the Financial Services Committee that joined us. Mr. Greg Meeks, would you raise your hand? Mr. Al Green is here, and Mr. Ruben Hinojosa has joined us. Thank you very much. And to add to all of that, we have the Minority Whip, one of our leaders in our caucus, who's with us, who has had this on his radar screen, has worked on it for many years, has a great appreciation for the bank, and I'd like now to ask him to come and share with us his thoughts about what we're going to be able to do. Congressman Steny Hoyer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman of this meeting, at least, and ranking member of the Financial Services Committee. I'm so pleased to be here with you, with the panelists, and with Fred Hochberg, who does such an outstanding job, and with whom we worked so closely on the last reauthorization, which I'm going to say a few words about. And Mr. Weber, let me say, I'm a big proponent of making it in America. And every time I hear some small businessman, medium business person, or large corporation say they're going to make things in America, it warms my heart. So we're very pleased at that. And let me say that the Democratic Party, perceives itself as the party of workers, the party of average people. And very frankly, we think small business people, medium business people, and large corporations fall into that category. And a party that wants to be for the workers absolutely has to be for the employers. Some people don't get that, but we get it. And therefore, we want to be of assistance. Very frankly, we're dealing with a philosophical challenge. And that philosophical challenge is there are some members who very legitimately believe that government ought to play no role in enhancing business opportunities or enhancing business operations. They believe that philosophically. They believe the free market ought to be free and unfettered with any kind of government involvement. Now, the problem with that is, Mr. Weber, the Chinese don't believe that. And so it's very nice to say, well, we're going to have the free market operate, but we're competing around the world with governments and countries that do not believe that. And they're getting help. And so you're competing not only with your competitors, but also with governments. And so I want to thank the ranking member for having this and for letting me address this body. I saw Lacey Clay, who I know was here earlier, walking down the hall. I said hello to him. I told him I was going to mention him, and you'll tell him that I was effusive. And we're so proud of Maxine. I also want to recognize my dear friend Denny Heck, who has talked to me numerous times about when are we going to do the Export-Import Bank. And I say, Denny, as soon as we can get Mr. Cantor, with whom I worked very closely to get the reauthorization. John Hughes of my staff and his staff people, Fred, as you recall, worked very closely together with Maxine, with others, to assure that we could get that bill moving. And I am very proud of the fact, I don't know how many of you know this, there were 183 Democrats voting on the bill. 183 of them voted to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank. We were unanimous. Our colleagues on the Republican side were not evenly divided, a little more for than against, but 93 of them opposed this, again, for philosophical reasons. The Export-Import Banks helps create jobs, expands manufacturing, and make our economy more competitive. And to the extent it's more competitive, we create more jobs, more opportunities for our people. Last year, the Export-Import Bank financed $47 billion in export sales and helped 2,764 businesses. 2,156 of those were small businesses, many of which would have had difficulty accessing private export financing. And I think a number of the panelists have reflected that reality. The Export-Import Bank fills that gap and helps American businesses compete overseas and access new markets. I tell people that when I was growing up in high school and college in the late 50s, early 60s, the United States had hegemony throughout the world in terms of economic clout. We didn't have to really worry about it. We were it. We didn't have competitors. And so perhaps we didn't have to be as focused on competing. But that's not the case today. The case today is we have, as you pointed out, Mr. Weber, the Chinese, but others as well, very, very able and energetic and all over the world competing with us. And so we have to compete. The bank is a win-win for expanding exports, supporting job growth, and reducing the federal deficit, which is why efforts to reauthorize it have received strong and bipartisan support in Congress. The bank's authorization expires on September 30th of this year, so it's essential that Congress move forward with reauthorization quickly. Promoting U.S. exports is one of the core components of House Democrats' Make It in America plan for jobs and competitiveness, and it is a critical avenue for ensuring that our private sector can facilitate expansion and job creation over the long term. Again, I want to thank the members of the committee. I want to thank in particular Ranking Member Waters for making this a priority issue for Democrats on the Financial Services Committee. I served on what was then the Banking Committee. It's now the Financial Services. For the first 18 months I was in Congress. I concluded I had no idea what was going on in the committee. And so I went on the Appropriations Committee. I knew what they were doing, but I also know how critically important the Financial Services Committee is, and I congratulate Maxine and all the members for their leadership on this issue, and I want you to know I will be talking to Mr. Cantor on a regular basis between now and when we pass this bill, because it is critical for the expansion of jobs and opportunity in our country. Thank you all for what you do every day.
Thank you very much, Steny. We appreciate that, and we know how much time you've spent on this. And Steny, before you go, you just need to know that you're right. This used to be the old Banking Committee, and after a few problems with the SNL, many people wanted to get off, and they put me on as punishment. And so I've been there ever since, and I've learned a lot. And what you were not able to figure out a long time ago, I finally got it.
Very wise people.
Punishment it was. Well, ladies and gentlemen, next I'd like to call up one of the members of our committee who has been singularly focused on this issue of reauthorization for the Ex-Im Bank. He has talked not only with Steny Hoyer, but he's bent every member of the Financial Services Committee's ear for the past year or so. And so he comes from the state of Washington, and I want you to know I'd like to ask him to come and give an introduction for a company that he has worked with and who's done so much for his state. Would you please come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Singularly focused is the most euphemistic description of my version of OCD I've ever heard used. It's my privilege to introduce our next panelist, Ted Ostel, who is Vice President of Boeing for Executive, Legislative, and Regulatory Affairs in the Government Operations Office, and as such leads all analysis of public policy issues, including especially international trade and finance. And look, it has been alluded to before by Chair Waters that the largest exporter in the United States sitting at this table, and Ted is a representative of them. But there's a couple of things here in passing that I think are really important. I strongly suspect or suggest that Ted will get into them. Just because they're the largest exporter and a large employer, the fact is they support a massive, massive supply chain of small businesses. So it's true that 90% of the transactions went to small businesses, but it's also true that the transactions that went to large businesses supported behind them an almost infinite number of small businesses. I happen to have the privilege to have one of the wing composite plants in my district. Right across the street, is a company that employs fewer than 200 people. Last week, I was on a Boeing airplane coming to National Airport, and Eric Hahn, a friend of mine from Tacoma, Washington, coming here to advocate on behalf of Boys and Girls Club. But he is the vice president of General Plastics with about 200 employees in Tacoma, Washington. He stood up and he pointed at the plastic between the containers above it. He said, "We made those. We made those." That little company of 200 people. So even behind the large employers is a massive network of small employers and small businesses. So it's so much more than it seems on the surface. We're really privileged to have Ted here today to tell the story of Boeing. And for everybody's dollar who's sitting in this place, you know in your heart they make the finest airplane on the face of the planet. Ted Ostel.
Congressman, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Ranking Member Waters, members of the House who are here with us today, thank you again for the opportunity to join you. And Jenny, I hope those pickles are actually flying to China also on Boeing airplanes. That's just, you know, as you can see from the makeup of the panel that's before you today, American companies whose exports are facilitated by the Export-Import Bank run the gamut in the size, complexity, and in footprint. There is a great deal to be said about the EXIM Bank as it relates to the Boeing company, but in a word, it's jobs. It's our 160,000 employees. It's the 15,000 suppliers and vendors representing, again, hundreds of thousands of American men and women that are connected to the aerospace business. I'm hoping that the message that the panel will be leaving you with today is that reauthorizing the bank as soon as possible is necessary to keep U.S. companies, small and large, competitive in the global economy, and therefore able to create and sustain great jobs here in the United States. For starters, we know that every major industrialized country in the world, now joined also by China and India, as you all have been speaking about today, with rapidly growing economies, provide some kind of export credit assistance or government support to their domestic industries. This is representative of the overseas unlevel playing field. Frankly, it's tough for businesses of all sizes, but this is what we have to compete in, all companies, to market, sell their goods and services. But let me be real clear about one particular point that's been in the newspaper of recent note. The Boeing Commercial Airplane Company does not receive any loan guarantees from the Export-Import Bank. Rather, it's eligible overseas customers who access the bank for guarantees to acquire commercial loans. Here's an example of how it works. Ethiopian Airlines is one of Africa's largest, fastest growing, and most well-managed carriers. Nearly a decade ago, the airline ordered 10 787 Dreamliners, 5 of which have already been delivered. Even though the airline's financial position has been maturing and growing and strengthening, it still needed the EXIM Bank to complete those sales. I should note that our European competitor, Airbus, competed very, very fiercely for that same contract. And the loan guarantees that they were able to be expecting from the 3 European credit agencies were a very important part of their proposal. But by choosing an American airplane, Ethiopian Airlines is helping to support more than 8,300 U.S. jobs that are directly associated with the manufacturing of the Dreamliner here in the United States. Without export guarantees to match or fill the marketplace gap, deals like this wouldn't get done, and U.S. jobs, frankly, would be lost. In our business, even the longest-standing, most loyal customers can and sometimes do turn to our competitors, like Airbus, if the business offering falls short of whatever their expectations may be to bring it all together. Furthermore, I should stress, as has been said today, that the rates and the fees associated with the government export credit, well, frankly, compared to commercial lending, they're on the high end, meaning that foreign airlines are not getting sweetheart deals to compete with our U.S. carriers. And the fees that have charged to the eligible borrowers as already Congresswoman Waters has indicated, make a profit that's returned to the Treasury. As you may know, some of you anyway, the rate of default by the airplane portfolio at XM, it's virtually zero. In the unlikely event of a default, however, if it were to occur, the Export-Import Bank would place those aircraft with other carriers somewhere in the world, not putting the government or the U.S. taxpayer at any risk whatsoever. The Export-Import Bank is important to Boeing for the simple reason that about 80% of our commercial airplanes today are delivered overseas, making us, as has been referenced, the leading manufacturing exporter in the United States by sales. Every single Boeing airplane that's purchased abroad, and in some cases by a customer that is using export credit assistance, includes parts and contributions from thousands of American suppliers. In California alone, the Boeing operations sustain nearly 200,000 jobs, most of which support our commercial airplane operations. And Boeing spends about $7 billion in the state, with over 3,000 vendors and suppliers. They include Amundsen Precision Engineering, a metal fabrication and restoration firm that's located in Torrance. Consider a state like Michigan. There, Boeing spends nearly $300 million a year, supporting directly and indirectly some 18,000 jobs with more than 270 companies. Companies like Ramco, Sanding Machines, and Jennison, which provides equipment for the manufacturing of aircraft. In all, the facts show that the reauthorization of the bank is clearly in the interest of all U.S. taxpayers, as well as Americans who are working for companies that sell products overseas, and just as importantly, for companies that aspire to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and that was a great explanation of the relationship between Boeing and the bank. And if you will, I'd like to get your testimony so that I can make sure that our friends who are in opposition can read it and understand why it is so important for us to have support. Next, we will have Mr. Stephen Wilburn, a decorated United States Marine Vietnam veteran, including the Purple Heart Medal. He is the founder and CEO of Firm Green Incorporated in Newport Beach, California. Firm Green Incorporated manufactures innovative and cost-effective green energy equipment and products. The company was named XM Bank's Exporter of the Year for Renewable Energy in 2013. Mr. Wilburn.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Waters. And I know you're a strong advocate of the environment and minority-owned businesses and a big supporter of the military. So it's always an honor to be asked to participate in anything that you're involved in. I want to, in the interest of time, move on. I don't want this to be an infomercial about my company, okay? The platform is we are proud of what we do. Firmgreen.com, www.firmgreen.com. Please go there if you're interested in learning about my company a little more. I'd much rather change my prepared remarks and talk about the 165 jobs we created in where I grew up in the Rust Belt of the United States, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Illinois. And I grew up as a minority in a city called East St. Louis, Illinois. The Congresswoman knows the area and why I was a minority in that particular city. But it was an honor for me to be able to go back with the help of the Export-Import Bank and give those jobs to these small machine shops. I had a choice of where I gave these jobs to. There were cheaper places that I could have hired. I could have done 30% or so of these or overseas, if you would. But we made a conscious choice at Firm Green to make sure that we gave back to the country that's given me and our employees so much. And that's a philosophy that is shared on this panel almost universally. And for that, I'm proud to sit here. The other part that I'd like to make is we just lost an order, an important order. And it just came to me. And I'm a little taken back by it, but I thought I would share it with you in real time. The Korean government, Export Credit Authority, from one part of the story, represented that there was a high degree of uncertainty about the reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank in the United States. This is a $57 million contract, ladies and gentlemen, for my company. And we've lost it to the Korean government, and we were the preferred vendor. But it appears, and I'll get all the facts, but it appears that because of uncertainty about the bank's future and our ability to give those kind of supports and credit enhancements to that particular creditworthy entity that we were ready to submit the application on for the bank after spending many months in due diligence and technical due diligence. I'm not crying. I lose business every day. You know what I mean? I just want you to understand the impact on the people of my company, me personally, and those people in the Midwest that I can't give those jobs to. I can't give those contracts to them. It's not going to happen. To me, that's unconscionable, that we allow this debate to rage on a partisan basis. And I'm not here representing one side or the other. But I can tell you from my heart that, you know, we used to be able to disagree in this country and not be disagreeable. That's the kind of environment I grew up in. And I am proud of my service for the country. And the part of the jobs that bother me the most that we're losing are the kids that I just made a promise to, several of them were Afghan returnees, that we were training for a particular job to bring that to fruition. I'll find another way to take care of it and honor the commitment there. I guarantee you that. And I guarantee them that. So I apologize for not having a very prepared speech, and I deviated from it. My staff will probably say, boss, we spent all that time trying to educate you. This is a very important moment for the company. But it is an important moment for the country, more importantly than my company. We need to quit this debate about the functionality of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and we need to get on with making America competitive in the world's marketplaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilburn, for that presentation. And I want you to know that a Purple Heart Medal owner does not have to apologize for anything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you for East St. Louis, Illinois, too.
Thank you.
They're still challenged. And whatever you have done has helped them quite a bit.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to Mr. Owen Herrnstadt, Chief of Staff for the President of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. The association represents over 600,000 active and retired members who work at some of the largest exporters in North America, such as Boeing, John Deere, General Electric, Lockheed, and many other companies. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Herrnstadt. Would you please go ahead and make your presentation?
Thank you very much, Ranking Member, and Congresswoman Waters, Congressman Heck, and everyone else who's been so supportive of U.S. workers, and obviously so supportive of the bank over the years. Steve has given me kind of an incentive. I think his moving presentation has given me incentive to kind of scramble a little bit what I was going to say. And I really want to start really with the conclusion. And it's a pretty simple conclusion. You know, organized labor doesn't always agree with business. We probably agree a lot more than people let on, but we don't always agree. But it's clear that labor and business support the reauthorization of the bank, and we support the full reauthorization of the bank now. Not 12 months from now, not 8 months from now, not playing games. As America's working families continue to struggle in today's difficult and fragile economy, they really have little patience for beltway politics that continue to stall a proven instrument of export growth and job creation like the Ex-Im Bank. The Machinists Union represents workers, as Congresswoman Waters mentioned, in a variety of industries. Aerospace, obviously, electronics, defense, shipbuilding, woodworking, and many others. We produce the exports that make our economy thrive, and we're proud of that. Global competition, you've heard time and time again from all of these folks on the panel, has never been more fierce. Successful countries and economies recognize the importance of a strong manufacturing sector and have developed industrial policies that to support jobs in their own countries. For example, not long ago, the European Commission had a report called Star 21 on the aerospace industry. We've heard about China today. They rely on a comprehensive industrial policy to develop their own aerospace industry. In fact, their own manufacturing industries. Among many other things, they rely on the transfer of technology and production from U.S. and European companies to make certain that they do succeed in those industries on it. Both OECD and non-OECD countries have relied on their own export credit agencies to develop and maintain their industries. Unlike these other countries, the U.S. has only one federal institution that support workers and their communities who make products for export, the Ex-Im Bank. Ex-Im began in the 1930s to assist this, and it has proven successful in satisfying its mission to create and maintain good U.S. jobs here, and in return to aid the U.S. economy. If the bank is hindered or prevented from supporting the export of good U.S. goods, like aircraft and other manufacturing goods, then U.S. workers, communities where they live, and our nation's economy will lose, and will lose big. If there's any doubt, and Ted, I'll apologize for this, but I invite you all to take the public tour at Boeing in Puget Sound. And all you have to do is look at the magnificent aircraft that are built by my members with the most advanced technology in the world. And you'll see the hundreds of workers that are responsible for that aircraft that are being sold to foreign airlines. What you won't see, as Ted mentioned and others have mentioned, are the thousands of suppliers, small and medium businesses, and workers in virtually every community that have produced a part or component for that aircraft. Now, some critics want to get rid of the Ex-Im Bank and export credit agencies entirely. They contend that since no country would be able to engage in this activity, all countries would be on the same level. They are wrong. Eliminating export credit agencies presumes that other countries are like the U.S. and rely solely on export credit to support exports and domestic employment. As noted earlier, this is not the real world of the global marketplace. Without Ex-Im financing, the U.S. aerospace industry as well as the U.S. manufacturing industry will be at a severe disadvantage, while other competitors are free to support their companies through their own comprehensive industrial policies. As China's export credit agency grows dramatically, why would we want to eliminate the only tool the U.S. has to effectively compete with China, particularly as China rushes to develop its own commercial aerospace industry? America's global competitors know that exports, and particularly aerospace exports, are vital to a strong economy and have repeatedly demonstrated a resolve to provide all necessary means of support to enhance export growth. Now is not the time for America to unilaterally disarm and surrender one of our last remaining engines of export growth. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause for all of our panelists here today. They've done an extraordinary job of helping to define what this bank is all about. We've heard from small business, from large business, we have heard from growing business, successful business, and it doesn't get any better than this. And we have a director who's responsible for the success of the bank, and we're very appreciative for him. Give him a big round of applause also. So it is time for some questions. I know that we have a few members left here, and I'd like to first give them the opportunity for a comment or a question that they may have for any of our panelists. Yes, Mr. Heck. Yes, that's fine.
I would like to once again add my voice of gratitude to each and every one of you. This has been the most unbelievably spectacular and moving and powerful and cogent set of arguments in favor of doing what we absolutely ought to do as fast as we possibly can. And you all gave something up to be here. Please know that we are genuinely very grateful. On our side of the table, we're playing, I guess, what the kids would call whack-a-mole. The opponents, and it is a minority, but they are together and they are loud. They will raise an argument and we will beat it down, and then they'll raise another argument, and they just keep going. Part of what I liked about today is you already played whack-a-mole. You didn't even know it, but you already beat down most of their arguments, and very, very effectively. Not the least of which is, if the XM didn't exist, we wouldn't get this contract, this business would go away, we would lose jobs. That's the single most powerful, clear, succinct statement. But here's one that wasn't dealt with at length. Fred, I think we have to deal with the issue of the stress test and where it got and how the opponents are misusing and abusing this. Because one of the greatest advantages here is to get in all of our heads why they're wrong and we're right, and why they are misusing data. They're using data like a drunk uses a lamppost to lean on, not to illuminate. And I, in particular, want you to deal with this one because, frankly, it's one of the more complex ones. And it's easy for them to get it by us if we don't deal with it clearly. And I'm going to ask you, Fred, deal with it clearly. Why it is they are so wrong when they suggest that the auditor's stress test reveals an unsound export-import bank, which is absolutely the opposite of the truth. Can you walk us through that, please, sir? And may I just conclude by thanking the ranking members so very much for your leadership on this, and each and every one of you, again, for giving of your most precious commodity, your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Heck. We appreciate your interest and your struggle with getting the opposite side to understand the importance of reauthorization. Would you like to respond to Mr. Hochberg?
Let me try and respond to that.
Yes.
First, I also want to thank you for hosting us today. And I took about 4 pages of notes because although I know these companies well, I always learn something more when I sit with and listen to them. So I appreciate that opportunity. Congressman Heck, in terms of a stress test, let me just explain a little bit what we do. When we have a loan that goes into default, a little bit even what Ted Ostel referred to with Boeing, but on average, we collect 50 cents on the dollar. So if we have a defaulted loan of $5 million, we generally collect at least, on average, we've been collecting $2.5 million. The stress test that you're referring to made a glaring error, and that is it presumed no recoveries. It presumed that we would not recover 1 cent, when historically, on average, we collect 50 cents on the dollar. And partly that's a couple of factors. One, our loan portfolio is collateralized. So they're just like a home mortgage or a car, we have collateral. And currently we have collateral in about 80% of our loan portfolio. So we actually can seize the property, be it an airplane or a tractor or other assets that we have loaned to. So one, we have collateral, which is was not fully recognized, and we're cross-collateralized. So if, for example, if it's, I'll use the example of an airplane. If one airplane defaults, we actually have collateral from all the other airplanes in that fleet that we have financed. So there's cross-collateralization. We collect on average 50 cents on the dollar when a loan does go into default. And currently we are running 1/4 of 1%, and we report that to Congress every 90 days. I mean, you know, Congress would see if defaults went to 1%, 1.5%, 2%, and at 2% we have to take remedial action. So there are a lot of stopgaps in the way before could ever even conceivably get to a point like that.
Well, let me just add that regardless of stress tests, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. 1 billion plus is enough for me with the Treasury. All right? Doesn't get any better than that. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank the persons who have appeared today to give us your stories.
Could you speak up a little bit to the
Of course.
Yes.
I am grateful to the persons who have appeared today. I'd like to thank Mr. Heck as well. He whipped me at the committee level to get me involved and to get me more prepared for this upcoming vote, which, of course, I will support the Export-Import Bank. But I do want to say this. Some of this is based upon a philosophical divide, and that divide is predicated upon a theory known as expansionary fiscal contraction. The belief is that if you can get government out of as much business as possible, get government out of business, then businesses will step in and they will supply the needs. Now, that's a theory that I don't buy into. I think it's a failed theory. But that's a theory that many of my colleagues operate with. And so there's a philosophical divide. And when you couple that with the need to have a majority of the majority to bring an issue to the floor, a small group of folk can have a very loud voice. Before coming over, I had persons in my office who were lobbying me for the Export-Import Bank. So apparently you have your people all over the place today. But I do have this as a question about process. What you have said to me, I found quite moving, and I think it can move others. To what extent has your story been told to the broader communities, to the communities where you have members who may not know what you have shared with us? Have you written newspaper stories? Have you been published in any way? Have you done talk shows? Just as a matter of curiosity, I'm eager to know how far and how wide you've had an opportunity to spread your message. And I see one lady's about to respond, but before, I'm just going to take my seat and listen. I want to thank you too, Mr. Zackerman, for delaying your trip, and your wife. And Ms. Jenny, you've given me one more thing to use when I talk about this process. There are a lot of tangibles that we receive, but also a good night's sleep is worth a lot. Thank you very much.
Please, yeah, Mr. Boyle, you've got your hand up here, and I'd certainly like you to weigh in on this this comment and this question. And while before you do that, I'd like to say that when I heard your presentation today, I was so impressed how you reiterated that the government had helped you, your family, and we don't hear that a lot. We hear people running away from the fact that the government is helping and pretending as if the government should have no involvement. But you said it over and over again, and I appreciate that. That was music to my ears. And would you weigh in on this comment and question from Mr. Green?
Oddly enough, Congressman, just the last week, the Department of Economic Resources and Development in New Hampshire, a very, very small state-run agency, held a small gathering for export finance hosted by TD Bank, and I went. And I represented, if I could, in my own small way, my experience of exporting in the state of New Hampshire to the 4 companies that showed up looking to learn how to export, and I supported them with the Export-Import Bank, and I've talked to all the members of the House and Senate in New Hampshire about this, and I've been featured on the website of the Ex-Im Bank. I've allowed my company to be shown in that light. I continue to do so, and I will. I've been on some local news stuff at home, and I will continue to do so as best I can in New Hampshire. The interesting thing about what you said about expansion, Expansionary physical contraction. Oddly enough, sir, in that same, what brings to mind is I was told in business school that if you're unique and you create a profit, somebody will want it. Somebody will want a share of that. And I don't understand if the Ex-Im Bank is returning a net profit back to the Treasury, why private industry isn't out trying to gain that profit for themselves. I work with a private bank. They don't want this business. They don't want it. So I don't understand why the chairman has to compete with them, because if there was a good product that they could offer, they would take Fred's profit away from him by competing against the Ex-Im Bank now. So they don't have an argument in that respect. And one last thing is, everywhere I've gone in the world in the last 20 years, at some 250 days a year overseas, never once have I been asked what party I represented when I worked with these people. Never once. Never once in New Hampshire, when I talked to people about my export relationships, was I ever asked what party I voted for. The only place it seems to come up is here, at home. And we're competing against ourselves in that regard. That's the part I don't understand. Have a debate, check and balance the system, fine. But nobody else is going to debate, and everybody else out there, the Koreans, the Kazakhstan groups, everybody, and even the ECA group in Canada, are waiting for this to go away because they'll win more business. It's that simple. They're going to take more business, while we decide whether philosophically we're right or wrong. That doesn't make sense in America at this point in time to compete on this stage. In the 50s, maybe, I don't know. Not now. Not now. So neither of those arguments hold water any longer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mercolino, I think you had your hand up. You're going to say something. Please, go right ahead.
Diane Sawyer's ABC News contacted us, and they somehow got word through Bechtel that this little company did this enormous airport in Doha, Qatar. And then they did this Skype session with us. And we feel so, we believe so much. Right now is the time for small business in America. We can kick China's bottom with our small business. We have so much energy, and we haven't even begun. This is the time right now. It's a very exciting time. That's why we're here.
Anyone else like to weigh in? Go right ahead.
Why don't you go first?
Oh, thank you, Ted. I'd like to reiterate what Nancy just said about now being the time. I mean, it's absolutely the perfect time. Let's look at it this way. There's an opportunity for a U.S. manufacturing renaissance at this moment, right now, and there's several reasons behind that. One, our energy costs are relatively inexpensive compared to our competitors abroad. Two, we have an opportunity to, in terms of the labor cost, you see the labor costs rising in China and some of these other places. All of a sudden, our labor cost is more competitive, probably more competitive than it's been in 20 years. And then three, the most important point I like to state is the U.S. technology, U.S. products have that outstanding, if not the best reputation around the world. So at this point in time, again, we have a chance to bring back manufacturing jobs right back to the States. Those jobs that have left the States, we can bring them back, and we can create new sustainable jobs as well. My small company, we are looking to open a co-pack facility within the next, say, 24 months. And basically what that's going to do is going to give us an opportunity. Right now, we're an export management company, but now we can employ personnel in a packaging facility. 30 to 40 additional persons we can bring on to make our products more competitive, and we can ship those products into our emerging markets. Again, sub-Saharan Africa, we're operating in Ghana, Ethiopia, Uganda. We have a chance to send our products to Vietnam. We have opportunities to export to Serbia, Bulgaria. We have our largest nutraceutical order, which is an infant formula that's manufactured by a company out of Indiana, going to Egypt. So again, we can be competitive in the global market, but we must have support of the Ex-Im financing. Without that, we can't do what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Austell?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Congressman, there is no more important a priority at the Boeing Company than the reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. And we have put ourselves in a position where we are applying every resource of the company from top to bottom, our employees, our suppliers. We are using all forms of media to tell this story and why it's important to the United States, throughout the entire United States, the reauthorization of the bank. The business organizations that are here in town, again, there isn't one that we don't work with or sit on that we aren't also driving this particular issue through their agenda. And we are fortunate at this time that our chairman serves as the President's Export Council Chairman. And in that particular role, there again, we are also working to get that message out more broadly to the American public. I will say the story that we heard about uncertainty. Even Boeing is seeing where our competitor is out marketing the uncertainty of the availability of export credit when they are going to airplane campaigns and saying, when it's time to deliver those airplanes, you can't count on XM 3, 4, 5 years from now like you can count on us. Buy our airplanes instead. The marketing of that uncertainty ties into this notion that we have got to we've got to reauthorize the bank as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please go right ahead.
Very quickly, yes, Congressman. We've been fortunate enough to be in major newspapers in the Los Angeles area, the Orange County. I'm from California, Newport Beach, California is our corporate headquarters. We've also been in Brazil, which is where our project was at the Export-Import Bank Finance, that I deviated from my remarks about. But the point was that we are tireless advocates for that, because I can recall sitting in the room where we were having the final competition, and, the hallway, waiting to go into the room. There were 11 lawyers and a couple of representatives from Linde Corporation. There was a bunch of lawyers from Air Liquide and myself. But I had a champion with me, and it was the Export-Import Bank of the United States, because my little company won that award, and we competed with the export credit agencies that were backing both of those companies. But without the chairman and the wonderful staff and the people that walked us through, my client, I was able to do this deal because my client got the credit. You know, as far as I knew, XM was a French perfume. You know, seriously, I was that naive when I first approached the bank on behalf of the client to see what we could work out with them. They took it over. My client was treated fairly, and it's been very successful. So that story will resonate. And as far as that goes, I did get a notice that the Wall Street Journal would like to talk to me about the loss of the contract. I don't know how they find out before I do, but that's very interesting.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from our panel? Please go right ahead.
I'm always in the news. I've been on 60 Minutes with Scott Pelley, who I adore. And I always talk about North Carolina goodness needs to be exported, and 95% of the people live outside the world. And our goal at Miss Jenny's Pickles is to become a household name. And I have small businesses every day in North Carolina coming up to me saying, how do you export? And I say, you got to go through the XM Bank. You're going to pay a fee, but you're going to get a good night's sleep by using their service. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way I believe. And I laid out outside just for you, Congressman. I was featured in the U.S. Chamber last year, and I was on the cover. There's one outside for you if you'd like it. And I talk about the XM Bank. Exporting is crucial to my business. People need North Carolina pickles. I'm telling you, it's crucial. So thank you.
Go right ahead, yes.
One last thing that I'd like to make a statement. The difference between Boeing Aerospace and us is time. And Boeing Aerospace started in 1916. And in 2116, you just wait and see how many people we've employed based on the work that you guys have supported with us here. And that's what everything is. That's what we're talking about, is the future is so great and so large. We got to support this.
Thank you all again so very much for your presentations, for the information that you have shared with us, for the way that you have helped us to be even more inspired to insist on this reauthorization. Mr. Owen Herrnstadt, I want you to go back and I want you to tell all of those workers, the International Association of Machinists and the Aerospace workers, they've got some friends over here, and that we believe in jobs, job creation, and expansion of our businesses so that we can ensure that our American families are taken care of, and that your support, your organizing, and all the efforts that you do for workers are certainly appreciated by all of us. We stand with you as we pursue this opportunity that should not even be a question in anybody's mind. Thank you all. A big round of applause for all of them. And thank you, audience, for being here and for sticking with us. If you have any questions, please, we will welcome your question right now. If you'd like to ask a question. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Congresswoman Waters. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their schedules to be here with us today. I'm from Senator Debbie Stabenow's office from the state of Michigan, and my name is Michael Gilmore. And I just had a question. I'm from Detroit, so I understand what manufacturing means in this country. And I know that we talked about the noise and the critics, so I just wanted to understand how we rebut the critics in the airline service industry that say that they're being placed at an economic disadvantage by some of our investments overseas.
Ms. Hochberg?
We get that criticism quite frequently. What we do is very simply, when U.S. companies, in this case primarily Boeing, is competing against Airbus, we make sure there's a level playing field. So foreign carriers have the choice of buying a U.S.-made plane or a plane that's manufactured in Toulouse, France, and Hamburg, Germany. To me, there's not a question. I'd rather the planes be manufactured here in the United States, keep people in Owen Herrnstadt's union employed, and keep a lot of the small businesses around this country employed. So we provide financing to create a level playing field. There is 2 U.S. carriers who find objection to that, and they feel that we should not be providing support for American jobs and selling the American aircraft. If we were not there, simply those airlines would be buying Airbus planes and be flying Airbus planes into the United States and around the world. I'd rather them be flying Boeing airplanes. So we want to make sure there's a level playing field, and those customers can pick, as Ted Ostell mentioned, Ethiopian Airlines can pick to choose whether they're going to buy a Boeing aircraft or an Airbus plane. And I think Owen mentioned, Ted, it was 8,000 jobs? How many jobs did you mention
In 8,300.
8,300 jobs are supported by those sales. Had we not been there, there's a high likelihood, particularly a credit like Ethiopian Airlines, that they would have purchased Airbus planes, which does provide the financing. And that's really the essence of the complaint.
Mr. Ostell?
Just one thing, and I'd be glad to talk with you afterwards. In terms of the cost of money, the cost of export credit assistance from the governments by comparison to what the U.S. carriers are able to avail themselves to in the capital markets, in the commercial markets, and from backstop financing, sometimes provided by the manufacturers, the cost of government guarantees is much more in most cases than what our carriers are seeing. So again, I'd like to talk with you afterwards, and I can give you some figures on that and share some details.
Actually, I'll just add to that. Every time a U.S. carrier gets financing, we compare what they pay with, we compare what a foreign carrier would pay with what a U.S. carrier pays. And in every single case, as Ted mentioned, the foreign carrier, with our assistance, is paying far more than any U.S. carrier would pay. So there is no financing advantage that is given to a foreign carrier over a U.S. carrier. That's simply an erroneous argument. That's part of the loud noise.
Mr. Herrnstadt?
I'll be brief. I've had a little trouble understanding the argument that was raised. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland. As Fred had mentioned, if there's another product that was there, so I have trouble understanding what the economic impact on the airline would be, since presumably they would be in the same market position that they currently are, plus to pin whatever losses they may have on the bank presumes that the bank is the only factor. There are lots of different factors that folks make for flying different airlines. I think we can all agree on that. And then just the last part is I would encourage anyone to actually ask these critics, name the number of jobs that are at stake. Put your finger on it. Give some empirical proof for that. We've talked about walking around a Boeing plant. You can actually see the workers that are responsible for that work. So ask them, what are the numbers that they're talking about?
Any more questions? If not, again, I'd like to thank our panel and tell them that those of us who understand the importance of the bank will be fighting very, very hard to get this reauthorization. I believe in the final analysis we will win because I believe in winning, and I believe that we can win. And so we look forward to doing everything we possibly can to ensure the reauthorization takes place and we create more jobs for Americans. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for our panelists here today. Thank you. Okay, well, this was good. Yes.
No other ranking member or chairman has ever done this. So never. This was really, to get all these stories out here, this was great.
But no, we believe in action, and we believe in not just taking what happens because the other side is in control. No, we go around, we create.
No,
we
I could
do
see
whatever
when we did that event together, I could
Yeah.
see you totally, you are all in.
That's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome so much. Hi there. How you doing? Good. You still here?
Thank you so much
Yes.
for holding this.
Yes.
I was just meeting with the CEO of McGraw-Hill Financial, and we were talking about the need to reauthorize.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Export
All
import.
right.
So I'm very thankful.
Good. You told him about this too.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. That's why I'm down
That's
here.
why you're here. That's right. I said she's here. She's staying. Coming off on this side. This side. Okay, I'll put some glue on when I go back up. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right.
Thanks again. It's good to see you.
Okay. Good to see you.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Can I get a selfie with you?
Sure. Absolutely.
And the camera and the phone people have not promoted this.
All right.
For my kids.
Well,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your help.
I love your speaking.
Anytime, anywhere, ma'am.
This is a tough here. All right. I know. You said that.
Can I have my picture made with you, Miss Waters?
Absolutely.
Please.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. I'm going to get Fred. Don't move.
Okay. All right.
Doing a picture?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
yes,
I have
yes,
to document it.
Let me get a better
Here, you want to be
angle
in
it
the
this
middle?
way so you don't have the emergency exit.
Hey, no. Come on.
Wow, a thorn amongst the
Wow,
roses. I like
yes,
it.
exactly.
All right.
We actually
Thank you. I'll send it to you.
It'll be sweet anyway.
As long as you're there, could I? Absolutely. You know how to use these things? I sure do.
I'll have it to you.
Ask me one time.
That was for Zuckerman.
very good. We'll see. Hopefully, you guys
Yes.
using little parts and stuff. It wasn't like.
We need the camera.
Oh.
So we can take a picture of you with your camera.
Oh, thank you.
As before in hearings where he's gotten a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the